Okay, let's talk about that feeling. You know the one. You walk away from conversation, maybe a really tough meeting at work, or even just like a long chat with a friend that felt heavy. And you feel just completely wiped out. Not just mentally tired, but like physically drained, almost like something heavy has settled on you.
Yeah, that sense of being hollowed out, it's incredibly common.
Exactly. Well, welcome everyone to another My Mind MashUps deep dive. This is where we love to unravel mysteries, spark curiosity, and try to make sense of complex ideas together. And our mission today, we're taking that term everyone knows, the energy vampire, and we're really going to look at it. What happens when we shine the light of science, psychology, and even ancient folklore on this idea?
Is the drain real, scientifically speaking, or is it just, a powerful metaphor?
That's the question we're tackling. And hey, before we dive in, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe if you enjoy content that makes you think. Okay, let's get into it.
Right. So first things first. Science absolutely validates that feeling of being drained. You are not imagining it.
Okay, that's huge. So it's real.
It's real, but maybe not in the way the name suggests. The drain isn't, mystical or supernatural. It's happening through very concrete, measurable, physiological mechanisms.
So what's actually being drained then, if not like life force?
It's our psychological energy, our mental resources, our cognitive function, our sense of calm, even our good mood. That's what gets depleted.
Gotcha. And our sources talked about something called emotional contagion. This isn't just consciously feeling sad because someone told a sad story, right? It's deeper.
Much deeper. It's largely unconscious. Think of it like your brain automatically syncing up with the people around you.
How does that work?
Well, it happens partly through unconscious mimicry. We subtly copy facial expressions, posture, even tiny movements of the person we're with, and doing that actually triggers the corresponding emotion inside us.
Huh. So you frown because they're frowning, and then you start to feel down.
Basically, yes. And the sources point heavily to the brain's mirror neuron system. These neurons fire both when we perform an action and when we see someone else perform it. They sort of simulate the other person's state internally.
So even if I'm trying to stay objective, my brain is running a background simulation of their anxiety or anger.
Precisely. Your brain is echoing their emotional state. And this isn't just subjective feeling. Scientists can observe it. They see synchronized physiological reactions, things like heart rates aligning, similar brain activity patterns, even hormone level changes during intense emotional sharing.
Wow. So if someone's internally freaking out, my body starts to pick up on that, even if my rational mind knows there's no danger.
That's the core of it, which leads directly into stress contagion.
Okay, this part I found fascinating. Stress itself is contagious, like actually contagious.
Yes, literally. Just observing someone else who is stressed, even a stranger on a screen, can trigger a rise in your own cortisol levels. Cortisol is the primary stress hormone.
So you're basically catching their stress.
You are. It's called empathic stress. Your body interprets their distress as a potential threat signal, even if it's not directed at you.
The sources had that experiment, didn't they, with the couples?
Ah, yes. That was a powerful one. One partner had to do a stressful task, like a public speaking simulation, while the other partner just watched from behind a one-way mirror. They couldn't help or interact.
And the watcher?
The observing partner, who was perfectly safe, showed increases in their cortisol levels that mirrored the person actually undergoing the stress.
Just from watching, that's sobering. You pay a biological price just for witnessing someone else's struggle.
Exactly. And think about the implications for chronic exposure. If you're constantly around someone who is negative, critical, highly anxious, or always in crisis.
You're getting these little cortisol spikes all the time.
All the time. And that constant low-level activation of your stress response system wears you down. It leads to fatigue, a weaker immune system, irritability, mood disturbances, all those things people report feeling after dealing with a so-called vampire.
I remember reading about a 2024 study that really nailed this. It found when one spouse responded to their partner's problems with, like criticism or invalidating comments, the partner receiving that criticism had measurable cortisol increases right there during the conversation.
Wow.
So that feeling of being exhausted and constantly on edge, it's not weakness. It's your body's stress system working overtime because of the interaction.
It's a genuine physical and psychological fatigue. Documented.
Okay, so that's the how. the mechanism. Now let's shift to the who. When we talk about emotional vampires, psychology often points to specific kinds of toxic relationship dynamics or personality traits, right?
Yes, we start looking at patterns of relating that are fundamentally unbalanced, where the giving and taking is seriously out of whack.
And the profile that comes up most often seems to be the narcissist. We're talking narcissistic personality disorder, NPD.
That's a common connection, yes.
Yeah.
Individuals with NPD tend to need constant admiration. They often exploit others, they lack empathy, and they can see people more as, well, as resources to meet their own needs.
So how does that dynamic drain someone? Is it always aggressive?
Not necessarily overt aggression. It's often more about the relentless demands. Constant need for attention, for emotional support, for someone to manage the crises they often create for themselves. And crucially, there's often a complete lack of awareness of the burden they're placing on others.
So the partner feels just dragged down, constantly giving.
Exactly. They become the source of narcissistic supply. It's exhausting because it's so one-sided. There's no reciprocity, and that lack itself is deeply depleting. It really parallels that victim-feeder metaphor, doesn't it?
It really does. But like you said, it's a dynamic. For that to work, there needs to be someone willing to be the host, right? Someone who keeps giving.
Absolutely. You often find the other side of this coin is someone who might identify as codependent, or maybe a highly empathetic person, sometimes called a fixer.
And what defines that role?
Often it's individuals whose sense of self-worth gets tangled up in meeting others' needs. They prioritize the other person, sometimes to their own detriment, giving and giving until they have nothing left.
And the cost for them must be huge.
Well, enormous. Because the support only flows one way. The codependent person often absorbs the stress of the other, maybe even enables problematic behaviors, and ends up with chronic stress, total emotional exhaustion, feeling helpless. Classic burnout.
It sounds like highly empathetic people might be particularly vulnerable here.
They can be, because their empathy system, those mirror neurons we talked about, might be working overtime. They feel the other person's distress so keenly that setting boundaries becomes incredibly difficult. It feels like they have to help, even when it's hurting them.
This really hits on what we try to do in every deep dive, sparking curiosity, challenging assumptions, and expanding understanding. We're taking this almost mythical term and finding real science and psychology behind it. And if this is resonating with you, if you're finding this useful, please do hit that subscribe button so you don't miss our next deep dive. Okay, so we've looked at the science and the psychology. Now let's zoom way out. Let's look at folklore and history, because this idea of life force draining, it's ancient.
It really is.
Yeah.
It shows how long humans have grappled with this feeling of being inexplicably depleted by others.
So in Europe, before we had terms like cortisol or MPD, what did they blame?
Well, you had figures like the succubus and the incubus. Demonic beings, essentially, thought to drain your vitality, your life essence, while you slept.
Which makes sense if you wake up feeling utterly exhausted for no apparent reason.
Exactly. And then there's the Alp from Germanic folklore. This was a spirit believed to sit on your chest while you slept, stealing your breath or your life energy.
Which sounds a lot like
Sleep paralysis. It was a way to explain that terrifying experience of waking up, being unable to move, feeling a pressure on your chest, and feeling drained afterwards. A pre-scientific explanation.
fascinating. And it wasn't just Europe, was it?
Oh no, it's global.
Yeah.
The core idea of vital essence being stolen pops up everywhere, though not always blood. In China, you have folklore about Yao Guai's sort of demonic spirits, or the Jianxi, the hopping vampire. Both were sometimes said to consume qi, which is vital life force.
Yeah, okay.
And you find similar ideas in various African and Indian traditions too. Spirits, witches, or other beings who could eat someone's life aura or spiritual energy, causing illness or fatigue.
So this anxiety is deeply embedded in the human psyche across cultures.
It seems so.
And then this ancient idea gets kind of formalized in more modern occult and new age thinking, right? With the psychic vampire.
Yes, exactly. You start seeing the term used in the early 20th century by occultists like Dion Fortune, and later people like Anton LaVey popularized it to describe certain types of people, maybe those who are very charismatic but incredibly needy, always demanding attention and sympathy, leaving others feeling drained.
So it shifts from a literal monster to a human type, but still with a mystical element.
Often, yes.
Yeah.
Especially in New Age frameworks. Here, the belief is often centered on a drainable energy field, an aura or prana. Feeling suddenly tired, irritable, or off might be interpreted as a psychic attack.
Meaning someone else's negative energy has directly impacted yours.
That's the idea in those systems, that someone has somehow tapped into your energy field and siphoned off your vitality.
And this framework comes with its own protective measures, doesn't it?
Naturally. Things often categorized as energetic hygiene. You hear about visualizing protective shields of light, carrying certain crystals believed to have protective properties, burning sage smudging to clear negative energy, or even performing rituals to cut symbolic, etheric cords connecting you to draining individuals.
Right. But we need to put that scientific disclaimer back in here, don't we?
Absolutely critical. To be very clear, based on our sources, current science does not validate the existence of a literal, transferable, mystical life force like prana, ki, or auras that can be measured or proven to be stolen. These concepts and practices belong firmly within metaphysical or spiritual belief systems, not empirical science.
Okay, so we have these two big perspectives, the scientific psychological one and the folkloric spiritual one. Where do they actually overlap and where do they really part ways?
Well, the overlap is pretty significant in terms of the experienced outcome and the practical advice. How so? Both frameworks absolutely recognize that certain interactions with certain people leave you feeling awful, drained, anxious, unwell. The symptoms described are often identical: fatigue, brain fog, irritability, even physical illness over time.
And the solution?
Boundaries. Both perspectives strongly emphasize the need to set firm boundaries to protect your own well-being. Whether you call it reinforcing your psychic shield or learning to say no effectively in therapy, the fundamental goal is self-preservation from harmful dynamics.
So the what to do is similar, but the why it's happening is totally different.
Exactly. That's the core divergence. Science attributes the effect indirectly. It's an internal process. Your empathy system's getting overloaded, your body pumping out stress hormones in response to someone else's behavior, which might stem from their own issues like insecurity, trauma, or personality disorder. The effect is real, but the mechanism is psychosocial.
Whereas the spiritual or folkloric view
sees it as a direct transfer, something tangible, even if mystical life force, energy, aura is literally being siphoned from you by another entity or person, often cast as a kind of predator.
which maybe explains why the vampire metaphor is so sticky, so persistent.
I think so. It gives a simple, powerful, almost intuitive narrative for what can be a really complex and painful subjective experience. It validates that feeling of having something taken from you, of being violated energetically, without needing a complex psychological explanation.
And maybe both frameworks offer value. The science gives us concrete tools, understanding cortisol, learning boundary scripts, while the spiritual practices offer comfort, ritual, and a sense of control for those who resonate with them.
That's a good way to put it. Ultimately, the key takeaway seems clear. People can and do deplete your energy reserves, whether you understand that through a neurochemical lens or a metaphysical one. The impact is real.
And recognizing that impact, understanding the how, whether psychological or spiritual for you, empowers you to protect yourself.
Absolutely. Knowing it's happening and why it might be happening according to different models is the first step towards managing it effectively.
So perhaps the real magic that left you feeling so drained after that interaction wasn't supernatural at all. Maybe it had a name like emotional contagion or a cortisol spike or dealing with unmet narcissistic needs.
And being armed with that knowledge means you're not just trying to ward off some vague monster. You're equipped to recognize the physiological and psychological cost and to actively set the boundaries needed to protect your own energy and well-being.
That feels like a much more empowered place to be. Well, that brings us to the end of this My Mind Mashups deep dive. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you found this helpful or intriguing, please do like, comment, and subscribe. It really helps us bring you more deep dives like this one. And definitely drop your thoughts in the comments below. What are your experiences? How do you understand this phenomenon? Your perspective could genuinely shape our next deep dive. Remember, you can find My Mind Mashups everywhere you listen. Just search for us on Amazon Music, Audible, Spotify, YouTube, Pocket Casts, Facebook, wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for joining us.